Well, hello and welcome to the recording for Week 7, Computer Fundamentals B. And you can see that Week 7 goes from February 18th to February 24th. So we're in Week 7. We only have 9 weeks in this course, so we're really getting down to the end of the course. If you're behind, you need to get busy, get work made up. By now, you should be about at the minimum 400 points by now. And that way, if you only do a couple hundred more points, you're guaranteed to pass. But it's really important that you get those points up. So again, by now you should be around 400 points, and that will put you in a good position to pass the class even at the lowest level at 60% of 600 points. Okay, as you can see, Week 7 is Unit 9, which is electronic communication, and Week 7, or Unit 9, is going to be broken up into 2 different weeks. So for Week 7 and Week 8. So for Week 7, we're doing sections 1 through 4. And you can see that we're going to look at email do's and don'ts, the fact that things on the internet are essentially there forever, and then in section 4 look at file size and why that's important, why you need to keep that in mind. I also want to remind you of the passing plan I have posted. So click here, go look at the passing plan. So here's the passing plan. This is a way that you can get 635 points without doing everything. So I've broken it down for you. You can see that it means you do well on the exams. It means that you, except semester exam, you get 50% on the semester exam and still get this kind of a grade. It means you submit a lot of the early work, which is probably easier than some of the later work. Also that you get full credit on all of the Class Connect write-ups, the finishing plan, etc. So I would suggest you look at this if you're struggling to pass the class. All right, let's jump into Electronic Communications Unit. And Electronic Communications, we'll go right into Section 1. In Electronic Communications, you can see we're obviously going to talk about communications through electronic means. And while we've been looking at PowerPoint, Word, and Excel as a way to communicate data and information, electronic communication is done in other ways. You can see it done through electronic mail, through blogs, through web pages, through instant messaging. Of course, these days it's also done through social networking like Facebook and other things. Of course, when this course was written, Facebook and social networking wasn't a real important part of communications. Let's go to the Class Connect write-up, see what questions we have. What are 4 ways to communicate electronically? So we just talked about those right here, those 4 items right there. Okay, Section 2. Now Section 2, email do's and don'ts. So we're going to focus on electronic mail, do's and don'ts for that. So we're going to look at electronic mail applications, the use of internet safely and legally, and the appropriate uses of electronic mail and appropriate etiquette. So electronic mail, the process of sending messages over electronic communication systems. And it came out in about 1965, at that time when people who used mainframe computers, they began to leave messages for one another. So mainframe computer users, like scientists and people in colleges and things like that, were leaving messages to one another on mainframes. So that's how electronic mail started. Let's go to the write-up. So okay, we did that one. Since email is easy to send, what are the 3 risks of sending email? So I want to keep that in mind. So email clients, of course, those are the programs you use, and these are some of the main ones. But of course, Netscape Mail, that's essentially gone. When it talks web-based clients, this means ones like Yahoo Mail, Hotmail, those types of things. And of course, urgency. Would you ever send an email to the fire department if your house was on fire? No, because people don't answer email or aren't constantly on email. It's not like picking up a telephone or even checking text. But some people think that when they send an email that the email is received. Well, lots of times if it's an important email, you need to follow up with a phone call to make sure that the person did get it. Some of the risks of email. Of course, it's so easy. You can send it to one person real easy, and you can send it to many people real easy. Whereas a letter, like a handwritten letter, it would be hard to send. But some of the risks with sending email is that it might not be thought out carefully, it could not be well written, and it could be easy to offend someone. So those are some of the risks of using email. Sometimes you've probably sent an email or even a text that you hit send, and all of a sudden you think, oh man, I wish I could take that back, or I wish I hadn't said that, or whatever. So you really need to be careful when you send electronic communications, because it is pretty instant. Or you can't pull it back, I should say. So we covered that one. Okay, what is BCC? So now with sending email, there are a variety of ways. Like if this was your email box down here, you see you put the address in the to line, the CC line, which means carbon copy, and BCC line, which means a blind carbon copy. And of course, carbon copy comes from back in the days of typewriters, where you had a piece of paper you typed on, and then a piece of carbon paper in between, and then a piece of paper underneath that. Then the carbon paper would transfer onto the second piece of paper. So you could type two copies of something at the same time. That was before copy machines and all of that stuff. But anyway, of course, you know what the to is, the people you're directly addressing, and everybody can see everybody else's email addresses. Carbon copy, so what I could do here is maybe I needed to send an email to a student in the class and say, hey, you have a 45%, you need to really raise your grade, blah, blah, blah. Well, I would send a CC or a carbon copy to maybe the principal of the school, would see a copy of it, and then the person that got that original message, they would see that I also sent it to the principal. So then that student would think, oh man, the principal gets this too, so I better get on my work. Now, blind carbon copy, this would be if I sent a message, maybe again, if I sent a message to a student, your work is really bad, you need to pick it up and do a little bit better, or even a good message, hey, you're doing really great, really proud of how you're doing your work. And then I would do a BCC to the student's other teachers so they could see what I'm saying to that student, but the student wouldn't know that they got the message. So a BCC means that people get the message, but their names are not visible, their emails are not visible to the other people that get the message. And you can see the guidelines for how you might send messages, and I just talked a little bit about that. Reply versus reply all. I don't have a question about this, but this is really important. When you get an email, like sometimes I'll send an email out to a whole class, 20 or 30 students. And then if a student just wants to reply to me, they would just hit reply, but sometimes people mistakenly hit reply all. So then their reply back to me, everybody would see. So if I send it out and then a student replies and says, Mr. Harrison, can we have a phone call today at 2 o'clock? Well, if they did reply all, then everybody would see that same message. So you need to be careful with reply and reply all. And I think that goes with texting too, right? You can reply or reply all on texts. So you need to be careful with that. Punctuation, formatting, other emphasis. Of course, as we've heard, all caps, it's like shouting. So you never want to do things in all caps unless you actually do want to shout. And then punctuation. Maybe a question mark or an exclamation, or maybe a couple of them at the end of a sentence for emphasis is good, but not a bunch. So take a look at this message down here. It's hard to read. All caps is hard to read in the first place, and then this whole question mark thing is kind of a waste. Other things to avoid in email, be careful. If you do jokes, make sure that they're not offensive jokes. Sarcasm, because in email, people they don't see your face, so they can't see the facial expressions. That might mean that, hey, what I'm saying to you is a joke, or I'm being sarcastic. They might take it personally. Of course, abbreviations. Some people may not know what the abbreviations are, internet slang, etc. Of course, you also adjust your message to your audience. So a message that you're sending to a teacher would probably be different than a message you would be sending to your classmates or friends, where you might use the abbreviations sending to a classmates, but certainly not to a teacher. Emoticon. So what is an emoticon? An emoticon is a small graphic intended to signify an emotion. So of course this emoticon is happy or smiley face. And emoticons, they've been around for over 100 years. In Morse code, the number 73 means love and kisses. So it's not just something that was invented because of the internet. So you know what emoticons are. So you use them when you send texts and things like that. Spam. Of course, the thing about spam is that spam is mail messages that are unsolicited or unwanted. Oftentimes, spam will be sent to hundreds and thousands of people at the same time. Lots of times it's for advertising or to get people's opinion on a product or something like that. But obviously, we want to stay away from sending spam out. And you never want to answer spam. So how to handle spam? Never reply to spam, because once you reply to it, then they say, oh, that email works, so we're going to keep sending junk. You can set up a spam filter on your email program, and then it will give you a check mark if it thinks something is spam, and then you can delete that and say, please don't let any more come through from that company or that person. Don't send emails that can be considered spam. So send emails with a real point, not just a bunch of junk. So the summary, we looked at guidelines, formatting, and style of emails, BCC, CC, all of these things we took a look at. Let's go back to the Class Connect write-up, make sure we answered what is an emoticon. We did that, so we answered all of those. Good. Okay, so page 15, discussion. Of course, we're skipping discussion, so don't worry about that. All right, section 3. Now, once on the internet, it's there forever. And that's true, almost like email. Once you send an email, it's sent. You can't pull back an email in general. So you need to be careful anytime you post anything online or you send anything through email. So we're going to look at how to use the internet safely and legally, explore challenges, social issues with the internet. So email is permanent. So looking at this, sending an email, posting to a web forum, adding something to a blog, those are all permanent. And some of the issues, if you write something while you're upset, that message should be there for long after your feelings have changed. Also, an issue is that an electronic message that you send or post could be copied by people or forwarded, like something you put on Facebook. Somebody can like that, right? Or somebody can share that, and then it gets out to lots of people. So you really need to be careful. So if we go back to the Class Connect write-up, it says, what are 2 important things to keep in mind when sending email? Well, 2 things to keep in mind are that you might send something when you're mad, so that's not good. Then the other thing to keep in mind is that electronic messages are easy to copy and forward. So the first one up here, you might send something in the heat of the moment when you're upset, but then when you're not as upset, then you would not have sent it. And then the second item down there. Okay, next. The thing about posting things online or sending texts or putting stuff in Facebook, think about it. Would you like your future employer to see it? So if you're 14 or 15 and you're posting something on Facebook, would you like somebody 10 years from now to see that? Would you like your future spouse to see it? Would you like your kids to see it? So really be careful with things, provocative things, particularly images and sayings about stuff and the ways some students sometimes talk. Posting things online like Facebook and other places, or sending an email, should be at a higher level, different from the way you normally communicate with your friends. Let's look at a few examples. So I see here, blog. Of course, students don't really blog so much, but you do put things on Facebook. So you want to be careful putting stuff on Facebook. So like this one, a guy was a juror, and the lawyer found the blog after the trial, so they were able to go back and the case changed because of what that person blogged about. So it's always sitting out there. So social networking is really becoming an issue, isn't it? Employer access. Should employers be able to read your personal information? Well, what if you post something to a blog when you're at home about your employer? Is that okay? What about if you post something on your blog about your employer when you're at work and you do it? That would be different, right? So you need to really think about things. Many people, when they do things on their blog or on their Facebook, even have their addresses and stuff posted. Now, the one thing I'd recommend, like on Facebook, never say where you're going to be. Hey, party tonight at so-and-so's house. Post on Facebook. That's not good, because you never know who sees that Facebook, and now they're going to know where you are at 8 o'clock that night, right? So just need to be careful with those types of things. Cookies. A cookie is something that a company puts on your computer so they can kind of track what you did when you went to their website. So if we take a look at this, give an example of how a company may use a cookie, a web page cookie. So they do present a privacy challenge because information gets sent back to the website. So as an example, a company can use a cookie to see what web pages you visited when you went to their website. So if I go to Google and I do a search through Google, and then I find some web pages through Google, and I click on those web pages, Google knows what my search was, the pages I went to, and things like that. Now, obviously, they don't know exactly who I am, but they can make my web page start to send me advertising related to things I search on. And of course, you can also disable or restrict cookies. The things with that, though, is that some web pages, in fact, I think K-12 and Getting Online, I think you have to have cookies set because they want to know, they want to keep track of when you were last in your classes, when you left your classes, and things like that as part of the system. So see if you can come up with an example. Here's an example of how a company uses a cookie, but that's the Class Connect write-up question about cookies. So summary, think twice before you publish anything online. Probably think 3 or 4 times before you publish anything on Facebook, particularly images and information about where you're going to be. Just email messages you send to one person, it could be seen by others if they forward it, so be careful about that. Don't send something in haste. If you want to take it back later, it'd be hard. And then, of course, blog entries, forum posts, Facebook postings, they can be seen by people in the future, so you need to be careful with that stuff. Okay, section 4. And let's go back to the write-up to see that we covered everything. We did, okay. Now we're starting to look at file sizes, and file sizes are important electronically because as files get larger and larger, then it's really hard to send them via email or even via your phone. You have some trouble. So you try to send a picture to somebody and they say, "Oh, I didn't get the picture." Well, it could be because their internet service provider determined that file was too large. So we're going to look at email applications here, internet safely and legally, and digital storing and managing data. So different types of storage. There's what's called a memory hierarchy. And memory hierarchy just simply means there are multiple ways to store data. You can store data on CDs, you could store data as MP3 files and then digitize them onto your hard drive. You can put them on a USB drive. You can obviously save them on your phone. You can save files. So really, what memory hierarchy, the Class Connect write-up question just asked this, and what you need to know is that there are many, many ways to store data. And of course now you can store it in the cloud, which means that you store it off of your computer, off of your own hardware devices, in a file system somewhere. You don't even know where that file system is, do you? But it's on some hard drive somewhere. You can access it through the internet. Okay, bits and bytes. Computers store information in bits, and a bit is either a single 1 or a single 0. So this line right down here at the bottom, you can see has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, what, 12 bits. And all these lines have 12 bits of information. So the combination of those make up characters. And they also make up what are called bytes. So a byte is 8 bits of information. So we can see down here, like the word hello could be 5 bytes of information, 1 byte for each letter. So it's not important that you really know exactly what this stuff means, but what is important to know that what those bytes mean. So if we move along, as we start talking about storage, and that's the like your USB, your thumb drive, the storage that it has, like 1 gigabyte or 8 megabytes, whatever it is. And you can see that we have bytes, of course, that are the smallest things, but we don't really store anything in bytes. We need to look at kilobytes. So kilobytes would be kilo is Latin for thousands. That means thousands of bytes. So we think of it as being 1,000 bytes. It's really 1,024, but we always think of it as 1,000. So a kilobyte is 1,000 bytes. Then if you move down, then we have a megabyte. Mega stands for million, so megabyte is 1,000,000 bytes. Then finally a gigabyte is 1,000,000,000 bytes. So as you go, a kilobyte times 1,000 equals a megabyte, and then 1,000 megabytes equals a gigabyte. So if you have a new computer that has 9 gigs of space, or 8 gigabytes space, that is tremendous these days. So much more like my first computer was 10 megabyte storage. So you see how things have changed. So again, kilobyte times 1,000 equals a megabyte. And sometimes the reason this is important is because sometimes you might have images that are 3 megabytes. Well, that's 3,000,000 bytes. You need to compress that so it gets down into kilobytes so it can be sent over the internet more easily. Let's look at the write-up, see what questions we have here. Memory hierarchy, we did that. How many times larger is a megabyte than a kilobyte? We just talked about that. Relationship between image resolution and file size. So moving along, so now we start talking about hard drive capacity, and that's where you store your files, of course. And here's a sample of a hard drive, because that's kind of an old-fashioned hard drive. But you can see the prices of them. In 1989, around the time when I got my first computer, 40 megabyte hard drive, $1,200. And then a 1.6 gigabyte, which would be 1,600 megabytes, so that means it's 400 times the space than this one, but it was 3 times less in cost. And now we start measuring megabytes in pennies. So up here, this 40 megabyte, that would mean if we took the 0 out here, so 4 megabytes equals 120. So back here, $30 per megabyte. Now it's a penny per megabyte. So storage is so much cheaper these days. So file size is important because when you try to send information or post it online or email a picture to someone or whatever, the file needs to be small so that the system can handle it and so that they can get it via their email, or so that it easily opens up when somebody clicks on it. Now the way to check file size is any file on your computer. So you can see you've seen pictures like this, right? So you've seen your computer, and you've seen files on your computer. All you have to do is right click and hit properties, and that'll tell you the different information about that file. It'll tell you the file size. So you can go ahead and take a look at your computer and look at a few of the files that you have and see what size they are. So if I'm going to go take a look at something here. So I go to my desktop, my Insight folder. Here's my Insight folder and Computer Fundamentals. So here I am, Computer Fundamentals. I'm going to look at Unit 8 work. So I can look at some work like this, but that really doesn't tell me the size of the file, does it? But if I go back to that folder, and now I have it right here, if I right-click, Properties, now I can see, once I'm right here, I can see that this is 48 kilobytes. So you can see how large that is. Here's a PDF file, properties. This is 118 kilobytes, so pretty small file still. If I go down here to a Word document, right click, properties, there's a simple Word document, 13 kilobytes. These are all pretty small, so that's good to know, good to have that way. Now if I go to, here's a video, right click, properties, let's look at this video. This video 139 megabytes, so obviously so much larger, right? It's just a video clip. So you can see how you can tell information, and this is important, like if you have a USB drive, a thumb drive that might be getting full, check to see how big those files are. Delete some that you don't need anymore. Emailing in plain text versus Microsoft Word. So here's a case study. So it just talks about if you use Outlook Mail, and you can paste something from Word into Outlook Mail and just see the different sizes in the files. Image resolution and file size. The better the resolution, meaning like if the picture ends up being 2 megabyte, 3 megabyte, 5 megabyte, high resolution, the greater the resolution, the larger the file size. And that doesn't mean physical size like 3 inches by 7 inches. It means the megabytes, the space that it takes. So the greater the resolution for an image, the larger the file is. Now, I mentioned that because that's the class Connect Write-Up question. Relationship between image resolution and file size. So to view an image online, it ends up being like dots per inch. About 72 dots per inch is viewable on computers fine. So that would be low resolution, but still it's really viewable. But then if we go to the higher resolution, then obviously it's going to be a larger file. You can see down here 50 by 50 resolution, 100 by 100. That's the dots. There's a different quality in those pictures. And of course, the other thing with resolution is the greater the resolution, then the better the picture looks too. So you have a trade-off between the size of the file and the way the picture looks for the viewer. This is an example of using PowerPoint and taking a look at file sizes. So you can step through this if you want to, just see what happens when you change file sizes when you in a program like PowerPoint. Fixing the file size problem, you can compress. Like this says, if you have a picture in PowerPoint, then you go to Format Picture and compress the picture. And what it will do is it will change that. You're probably not going to see a major change in how the picture looks, but it could take it from 3 megabyte to 30 kilobyte. That's 100 times difference in the file size. Reducing the size of the image. Again, you can use programs like Photoshop, Paint, those types of programs to change the resolution, file size, things like that with images. And what does compression do? In compression, it takes the size of something, like here's a pretty good example. Here are 24 Z's. And you can see that if it can be represented this way, then this is only 5 characters, or this is 24 characters. And that's sort of how compression works. But when you compress images, like you can right-click on any image and you can compress it. Different files you can compress. You can compress sizes of folders by using a zip program. So compression is a way to make something smaller to be able to share it with someone else. Electronically share it, I mean. Finally, so what we learned in here, how to determine the file size of a document, pitfalls with sending data, how to reduce the size of images, and we looked a little bit about data compression. So now the assignment for this unit. This assignment, you're going to go through and see how you can change file sizes. So you're going to create a PowerPoint file, just one slide, so enter your name on the first page, the title slide, and save it. And save this, as I've said before, just save it as Unit 9 Assignment 2, then you know exactly what it is. Then you're going to add another slide and put a piece of clip art in it. Resize the clip art to be very small, so you would grab the corners of it and then drag it down so it's very small. Then you're going to add another slide, use the drawing toolbar, so you're going to draw something with about 4 objects and save the file. But each time you do this, when you save it, go right click on it, look at properties, see how big it is, then right here tell how big it is on each one of these. So what you're doing is you're examining as you go along in the process mode of creating a file. You're going to see how the size of the file changes. So if I were you, I would just take all of this, right click, copy, paste that into a Word document, or you can even paste that into the text area of the Dropbox. Then do your work and you fill out this part, the file size column. Fill that out every time you go along. So if we go look at this, the document sheet for this, you could also just use this document sheet and save it. So again, you're going to save every time, and you're going to put the file size, check the file size every time you save this, and submit this into the Dropbox. Pretty easy assignment. Pretty easy assignment to do. So that's all I have for you. So I'll just take a quick look at the Class Connect write-up. And we talked about relationship between image size and file size. Remember, the greater the better the image resolution, the larger the file size, the smaller the image resolution, the lower the image resolution, the lower the file size. All right, that's all I have for you. So I look forward to your work coming in. And this is a pretty easy unit, so should give you could get all this whole unit, this work, wrapped up in about an hour, I would say. So then that could get you time to make up old work. Hey, thanks everybody. Bye.